What do you think of the movie? Isn't it great? Yeah. I agree. Very special. I'm Stacey Wilson-Hunt. I work in Hollywood here for New York Magazine and Vulture, and I'm honored today to speak to Jamie Bell. So come to the stage, please.
Thank you. Oh, that's very sweet of you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I have to excuse, I sound like I'm bunged up, because I am bunged up. I've got a bit of a cold at the minute, so I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. Save your energy. We'll start slow. So before we get to the movie, I'd love to just talk a little bit about how you got into this crazy business. And of course, we met you fairly early in your life and in your career. But when was the first time you had a sense that you wanted to be a performer when you were growing up in England?
Pinocchio. I watched Pinocchio. And
the animated Pinocchio.
The Disney Pinocchio film, which I don't know if you've seen recently, is a trip. I have a 4-year-old son. It's really bizarre. It's really an acid trip.
See it now through your son's eyes, and you're like, whoa.
Oh, it's just crazy. It's really crazy. But there's a song in it which is An Actor's Life for Me. I don't know if you remember the song from there. And it wasn't necessarily kind of... it didn't educate me of what an actor's life actually really is. I mean, it looked like a lot of fun. It looked really dangerous and, the kind of the gypsy lifestyle, as if you will. But I was dancing from when I was 6 years old, and one of our dances that we had to do was called Character, where we would have to portray, the various different kind of fictional characters. I played a frog, I think, at one point, and I played a scarecrow. And that element of the dance experience for me was everything, because I got to invent as well as, move. So that was really how it started, and I did a lot of. I joined the National Youth Music Theatre, which is a great organisation in England, and did a few shows with them at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and the London West End and all that kind of stuff.
So at what age were you actively performing a lot?
From 6.
Wow.
I was dancing in competitions in front of a lot of people and really nervous and that stuff from 6, yeah.
And were your parents supportive of this early on? Were they worried about maybe overextending you as a performer, or did they want to allow you to sort of do it as much as you wanted to?
Well, it was only my mom. I was raised by my mom, and I have a sister who's 5 years older than me, and she danced before me. So I kind of got into it that way because wherever my mom and my sister went, I would have to follow. So I literally was the kid standing outside the dance class going I've got nothing to do. And being really bored, and then eventually just kind of fell into it that way. So it runs in the family a little bit, but not that much. No.
And I read this last night, and I couldn't believe this is true, but it makes sense that you beat out 2,000 boys for Billy Elliot.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that the biggest casting call in history for a single role?
They scoured the United Kingdom. I first met with them in Newcastle, which isn't far from me, and did a round of auditions, which went, I thought, reasonably well, and then they just disappeared for months, and I thought that it was over. And then they went to different parts of England. They went to Yorkshire, and they went further south than that. And then there was another thing in the newspaper, months later, saying, we're coming back to your region. And basically all the boys that had already been through the ringer went through the ringer again.
Wow. And
I auditioned, I think, 7 or 8 times for that role.
Oh my God.
It was mental. I mean, it's the luckiest thing that's ever happened to me, for sure.
And what do you remember about making the movie? Did you have a sense of how it would sort of take a hold of audiences? Because it's such it not only has it held up, but it feels so special now. And I think it was very ahead of its time, I think, in telling a story like that.
I mean, I remember one of our producers called John Finn. He would always talk about in the years after the movie had come out. He was always like, I remember looking at rushes of you dancing on top of a toilet and going, what are we doing?
So they didn't necessarily know exactly how it was going to turn out?
Not at all. It was an unknown actor with this story that is has to hit a target that's that big, right. That has a lot of kind of British English politics that you might not really necessarily know about.
Right.
The Thatcher years and the destruction of labor communities and things like that.
Doesn't necessarily go with dancing per se.
Not at all. It's what are we doing? But the only experience, I had a great time because it was like Pinocchio. It was like the circus has come to town, and you were whisked away, and you were doing all this amazing stuff with all these fantastically talented, creative type people. But mostly, I was just terrified. I remember witnessing the amount of people it takes to make a film from the perspective of a 13-year-old boy who'd never done it before. The first scene I shot, I had to run out of the house, and there's a big long alleyway, and I have to look one way, and as I look this way, I just saw the amount of people. It's just the circus, all of the circus. I've never ran so fast.
Everyone's staring
direction.
at you.
Yeah, going it's on you, and I was like, I don't know what I have to offer, really. I really don't.
Wow.
But that film was so close to my own life. It really was.
So, and that's what I was wondering. So, you know, a young boy dancing in these small towns. I mean, did you relate to the sort of cultural, like, well, boys don't do that? I mean, was that something you would face too?
The northeast of England is a very masculine place.
Okay.
It's dockyard workers and coal mining and, you know, football and
It's like America too. It's
I'm
similar.
sure much like a lot of the industrial northeast of this country. But the dancing, I think now is a much more accepted thing.
Sure.
But when I was a kid, certainly not. I mean, I would hide like ballet slippers down my pants and stuff and ride on the bus and not tell. And I would have to leave school like 10 minutes early to get on the bus to go to dance class. I danced above a laundrette, like a dry cleaner's basically, in this tiny town. That's how it all kind of started, yeah.
That's amazing. And I watched this really cute clip when you won the BAFTA. You look like you still couldn't believe what had happened to you.
Well, no, because I beat out like ridiculous people like Tom Hanks. And
Russell Crowe.
I was like 14 years old. Yeah, I was like, this is insane. I actually forgot to thank my mother. Which she's never
She looked very proud of you sitting in the audience.
She's never forgiven me for that. But,
well, hopefully you'll have another opportunity in the next few months to do that.
Let's see.
So I was just revisiting all your work, and I'd forgotten all the incredible directors you worked with after that movie, who include Peter Jackson in King Kong, Clint Eastwood in Flags of Our Fathers, Steven Spielberg in Tintin, and Lars von Trier in Nymphomaniac, which I wish we had more time to talk about that. And then, of course, Josh Trank for Fantastic Four. I mean, that's a pretty impressive run for, you know, let's say roughly 10 years-ish after Billy Elliot. How does Film Stars kind of represent a next phase for you? Because it does, and I don't mean to minimize the performance, but it feels like your most adult, kind of fully formed, you know, romantic lead, which I hadn't seen you do before. Does this feel like phase 2 for you?
A little bit. I mean, I think you have to grow up eventually. And honestly, in those intervening years since my first one, you know, I didn't know how to do anything. I mean, I genuinely didn't know how to act. I'd never been to an acting school. I never had formal training. You know, I'd just been kind of winging it. And in many ways, I still feel there's so much that I have to learn, and there's still parts of myself that, like I have a son now, I have a 4-year-old son, and having children just opens up a different chamber of things that you didn't really knew that you had.
You got married this year too.
Yes, I did.
Which is exciting.
Yes.
Which is
Life comes
timely.
fast. Thank you very much.
Love. Well, you know, the
but yes, I mean,
relationships.
but when you work with
inform,
someone like
you
Annette
know.
Bening,
Yeah.
of course, there's no question. You have to step it up.
Right.
You just have to do more work. You have to work harder. You know.
How did it feel on the first day?
I
Working?
was terrified.
You were.
It
Did
was
you
really-
tell her you were scared?
No, I would never do that.
Okay.
No, the people I have a lot of respect for, I never talk to. Like, I didn't really talk to Steven Spielberg at all when we made that film, just because I love him so much and I love his movies. They've mean like everything to me. But my representation, when they sent me the script, they said, "It's a great opportunity for you, Jimmy. It's a real chance to go to work with a titan of the industry, toe to toe, a two-hander, real two-hander, just you and her." I was like, "This is a terrible idea." And be so exposed.
You're like, you're scaring me
Yeah,
into not doing
It's not
this.
you up there, it's me up there. You know. So then I was like, you know, I got a. For the first time, I actually employed this lovely woman. She's called Catelyn Adams. I don't know if you know her, but she's a real fantastic. I don't even know how to describe her. To call her an acting coach would be stupid, because it's so much more than that. She just helped me feel more. She's a feeling teacher. I really think, and we did a lot of work together.
About feelings, so it's
It really
pretty
is,
important.
Yeah.
And how familiar were you with this story? Obviously, it's a true story based on a memoir. Because I actually had never heard of the author. I'd never heard of this performer, which I kind of feel like this is a big story for me to not to have heard of. Were you familiar at all with it?
No, I didn't know who Gloria Grahame was. I certainly didn't know who Peter Turner was. And when I read the script, I thought it was a really bizarre kind of subject to base a film around. A kind of a faded Hollywood film star ending her life in a small terraced house in Liverpool. I don't know who's going to see that necessarily. But then I went to Barbara Broccoli's house and did a bit of a reading with Annette, and I looked up and I saw Barbara Broccoli, our producer, was crying. Which is always a little disconcerting as an actor, because you're like, what was it not good or something? Did I just like
it could be really good or really bad.
Just totally flunk that. But then she told me she knew Peter and Gloria when they were together.
Wow.
This is a very personal story for her. She's been trying to make it for 23
And she's,
years.
of course, the producer of all the Bond movies.
Yes,
this is
exactly,
quite a
yeah.
departure
Yeah,
for her.
Totally.
Yeah.
But she produces many things, plays, musicals. She has a lot of passions outside of that franchise and stuff. But and then she handed me the memoir, and when I read the memoir, I saw how close the script was to the book. It's a beautifully kind of fragmented, dreamlike journey that this man has. And I saw, oh wow, we've really just lifted so much from this book. And when anything has truth to it, I don't know, it just helps everything. It really does. And I think from a producerial standpoint, you know that they're going to go the extra mile if they're personally attached to it, Right.
And how much rehearsal time did you have with Annette before you started shooting?
We sat and talked in a room a lot with the script with Paul and Matt, our writer, and a lot came from that. We were always trying to mine it and push things further. But we talked to Peter Turner a lot. I mean, he's a crucial part of this. His contribution to the film is invaluable. And it's all still so fresh for him. I mean, I would talk to him for hours and he would be just exhausted. You could see at the end of it because he kind of relives all of it still. And it's still so fresh in so many ways. But almost nothing on its feet, no kind of walk through any scenes, nothing that we, could actually call the technical rehearsal. But during that time, those couple of weeks, we did establish very quickly this sense of trust and a good sense of support. I think when you do something that's so small and so intimate, it's about love. You need to feel like you have each other's backs, and I felt only like an equal with her. And that is testament to how giving and how generous she was to me.
What did you learn from her just watching her work that maybe you hadn't seen in other people you've worked with? Does she have a distinct style when she comes to set? Does she have a distinct way of preparing?
She listens to music a lot, and I listen to music a lot as well. And she's always like dancing around.
Well, that helped in the movie.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
she
that,
doesn't really sit still. I don't really like sitting still either. So there's a lot of that, but she comes fully prepared. I mean, fully. It's not like she has to take a second to get to the height, or the volume that she needs to be. The first take, she's already going, which is, for me, I think sometimes if I don't know what the set looks like, or if I don't know what the environment around me looks like, it takes me a little bit just to get used to everything, just to get, what this feels like when it looks like. But she's ready to go as soon as you get there.
Is that rare? Do you think that's...
I think it is. I think, for me... you're always rehearsing on camera. That's what you're told. That's what at least I've been told. Go to your edge, push to your edge, and just keep rehearsing. Never kind of do the same thing twice. Find choices and switch it up. But to be comfortable with that, you have to be, I think, extremely confident. I'm not extremely confident. I'm very analytical about myself, incredibly critical. So to just feel that comfort and to get to that place where you are, on the edge and you don't know what's going to happen. It takes me a bit of time, but for her, she's boom, in it, doing it, which
Real
is,
pro.
For me, really scary.
Well, obviously it worked out. And how did it feel to reunite with Julie Walters on this film? Because she was, of course, in Billy Elliot with you. That must have felt like a weird...
I'm just glad I'm a bit taller than her.
But what a strange thing to have worked with her so early on, and then now to... she's so wonderful.
She really is. I didn't own a button-down shirt before I met her when I was a kid, because when my mum said that I was going to meet Julie Walters, she was like, you have to buy a button-down shirt. You can't wear a football jersey.
That's sweet.
Yeah, so she's great. Yeah, I mean, she's wonderful. Also, I don't know if you know this actor. He's called Stephen Grahame. Fantastic actor. He plays my brother in the film.
Oh, he's so good.
He's mostly known for kind of very dangerous...
He was on Boardwalk Empire. He played Al Capone.
Exactly. He's in The Irishman now. Scorsese. He does those kinds of movies.
He likes
Gangster
to fight
movies.
and stuff.
Fighting, angry, dangerous kind of guy, reduced to a schoolboy when he met Julie Walters for the first time. That's how much of a national treasure she is, She's very beloved over there.
She is wonderful.
Yeah.
And you were at an event last night, and there was a screening, and someone asked, he's in a bit of a little jet lag situation. But someone asked a question in the audience. I would love for you to just share what happened and kind of and maybe how it's revealing of how people may see this film.
Well, I don't want to, I don't want to single him. Well, I do, I guess, a little bit, but I don't want to be so mean to him. Yeah. He just had a very kind of, the question was misguided and misplaced anyway, and then I think the way he asked it was just so poorly said. It wasn't eloquent at all. He kind of wanted to know if that was Annette's body, or if that was a body double, and what it felt to her to have kind of intergenerational sex with a younger man. And I was just I don't know, if you're talking about that, you've missed the entire point of the movie. The point of the film is love in its purest form and what it can do to you and how it can change your life and you'll never be the same. And how hopefully we all have these people who come into our lives and change us and our lives forever. And there is an inevitability about that where you eventually have to say goodbye to that person. So to reduce it to like, were those your tits? Or was that your body? Or how's, you're an old woman and how does it feel to be, screwing a younger guy, was just incredibly insensitive and stupid, frankly.
Thank you. And
so
also, if
I kind of shouted at him a little bit.
I wish we could have been there to see that. And also, if the genders were reversed, that question never would have been asked in a million
That's
years.
the things we've been talking about. Absolutely, me and Annette have been talking about that
and
a lot.
also, Annette married a guy roughly 25 years older than she.
Like that,
so I'm sure she's faced a lot of her own issues with these kind of ignorant, perspectives.
I'm sure.
How do you think this movie has changed the way you look at relationships and love now that you're married and you're older enough now, you have some experiences under your belt? Has it made you revisit the way you think about what love means and sort of longevity of people staying together?
Yeah, I mean, more than anything, I think certainly what the film deals with is the idea that, the film is really about memory and dreams and how lucid they are and how they're kind of very fragmented and a lot of the time can't be trusted. There's two people in a relationship. You can only know your truth 100%. You can't know their truth 100% at all. So I think it really gives me a lot of kind of empathy to people in relationships because they're really challenging, and as long as you have that sense of trust and support, then hopefully you'll go far. But certainly for Peter Turner, the man himself, I think the reason why he never intended to write a book, that was never what he wanted to do. It was never an ambition of his to be an author in any way. He was trying to make sense of what that was and what it meant to him. And I think in some ways he's still trying to do that. What went wrong? Why did she call me to end her life? Was I really that important to her? Why did they have that breakup in New York? What was that really about? Why couldn't she tell me that she was ill? Things like that. I think there's something about relationships that, especially if ones in the past that you've had that still remain with you, and I certainly have those relationships with people, and I think we all do in some ways, you're constantly like questioning it, and trying to make sense of it all. And I don't think you ever will fully get it.
And also, I think I love how kind his family was to her. I think you put yourself, the parents are not too much older than she was. And I can't imagine, I was thinking about, okay, how would my parents feel if I were in this situation, I brought this person, and I love the empathy and just the care of, this is a sick person, they're trying to help her. And I think, I don't know, it's very sweet. And
they're just good, decent
inspiring
people.
Yeah.
I think, maybe it's about the time that this is set or something, but, I think we're kind of, a lot of people have said what you said, it's like, it's so nice to see just like really good human beings.
Maybe the bar is so low now. We're like, people being nice to each other.
I think it's
amazing.
kind of true. It's just like good, honest people doing like the good, honest thing, the right thing. Also for Peter, I think about this a lot, and it's kind of touched on the film a little bit, but it's an awkward position that he was put in because he wants to do right by her, but his family have a good point. She needs help. We can't do anything for her here. And what a turbulent position to have to hold. It must have been very tricky for him.
And I'm sure you've talked to him about how he feels about the film. How did it feel for him to see this? Did he say, wow, you really captured everything I was feeling?
He sent me a very sweet email with lots of superlatives that I shouldn't really repeat because they're just embarrassing for me, honestly.
But he certainly felt like you did.
No, he's a mess all the time. He's
Aww.
Crying constantly.
Oh, poor
Crying
guy.
constantly. We showed the film in Toronto, and I'd heard that in the screening. The first time he saw it, he couldn't get out of his chair, and like they kind of had to pick him up because he was just a wreck. In Toronto, he started weeping with Annette and was just like saying thank you to her. I did a Q&A in London with him like at the weekend, and again just started crying. I don't even know why. He started crying, but I can see like when he talks about it, he loves her. He's still protecting her. He's her guardian now, forever in some ways. So yeah, it means a lot to him, I'm sure.
That's amazing. And obviously Gloria had a lot of family members and her children. Are they around? Did they see the film? Have you heard from them?
The guy who turns up at the house at the end of the film is called Tim, Annette knows the chronology of these children and marriages much better than I wish she was here to explain it. But he saw the film in London and he liked it. And,
Good.
we've been hopefully very respectful to her family.
I'm sure it's
all the
painful
people
for them
involved.
to revisit all this too.
Yeah. She had a very turbulent life.
She did.
And
I love that we see the clip at the end, and then you get to see how much Annette really nailed her voice, because Annette's speaking certainly not in her regular voice.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a point of reference for this woman, and when I
Right.
saw that clip, I thought they look a lot like
They
each
really
other.
do, yeah.
I mean, the casting was flawless.
Yeah. That was also the first time the Academy Awards were televised.
Wow,
Which,
really?
which in some ways makes me think that's why her acceptance speech is so short. Because
I
she
know, I was
didn't
like,
know that you have to go on this like really long thing. She had no idea.
Well,
So
I
it's just,
loved-
thanks very much.
I love Bob Hope's.
She didn't know what she was supposed to do.
I love Bob Hope's face too, because he looks over and he's like, I think she didn't know she was supposed to say something, and then she just. I think we can appreciate the brevity of that situation. And now that you're, some years into your career, is there something that you would tell young actors who are starting out now that you kind of wish you had known about maybe how to maintain your youth, but also, because obviously kids grow up so fast in general, even if they're not actors, but also, how do you maintain the sense of youthfulness, but also, having a foot in this next part of your life at the same time?
Yeah, oh God. I mean, I've been so lucky, honestly, of what has happened to me and the opportunities that I've been given, and the people that I've gotten to work with, and the roles that I've been given. I don't know. I owe so much of that to my manager. I've been with the same manager for 17 years. Poor woman. She's called Vanessa Pereira, and I'm just
Here in the U.S. or in the UK?
She was in the UK. She was an agent at like William Morris, and then came over here, and she took me with her, and she was someone who I was put with very early on. I wasn't really my decision. I was kind of like influenced by people, and they said, "This is a good woman for you. You should be with her," and she basically has just educated me on like everything, life. Relationships constally, movies.
So do you have to pay her more than 10%?
She was like, "You haven't." Yeah, well, no, it's still 10%. She gets a Christmas gift. But she was like, watch Malick movies, watch Coppola movies, watch movies. Like, educate yourself. If you want to be in this game for a long time, these are the actors you should be studying. These are the people you should be looking at. She'd be like, "There's this director who really wants to work with you." I'd be like, what's his name? It's like Thomas Vinterberg. I'd be like, no idea who that is. For those of you who don't know, Thomas Vinterberg is an amazing Danish filmmaker, part of the Dogma movement in like '95. Has made great movies, but I learned all that because of her. And also my agent Brian Swardstrom at UTA. I've been with him for 17 years as well. I think loyalty in this industry is very difficult to come by. I think if you find people that you love you for you, stick with them. Because, I haven't been bringing in a ton of coin over many, many years, but they've really guided me. They've guided me. They've really allowed me to grow up and make mistakes and do smaller parts and whatever. But I've learned so much, and without their guidance, I don't know if I'd still be doing it now,
Wow.
Genuinely.
Well, it sounds like you had a good mom, too, which helps.
Yes, I did, Eileen, even though I didn't thank her at the back.
We will make sure she knows this. So we have a few great audience questions today. The first is from Mija. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Mija. Excuse me. She would like to know if you had a role model growing up, or did you have to rely on yourself to be your own role model? It's a great question.
It's a good question. So I wasn't a lonely child because I had a sister, but she was 5 years older than me, so she just wanted nothing to do with me really, because she's 5 years older. But British comedy was my best friend, and in some ways still does feel like my family. That means like Fawlty Towers with John Cleese, Blackadder with Rowan Atkinson, Steve Coogan and all his Alan Partridge stuff. If I'm down or sad or anything, I put that in and just watch that all the time. And I look up to those guys because it was, they're just brilliant actors doing brilliant work, and but mostly characters, in movies. I found movies to be very comforting. Spielberg movies especially, but I think he deals a lot with divorce in his films. I don't know if you guys saw like the HBO Spielberg documentary, but the theme of divorce and children and trying to put things back together, I really identify with a lot because that was essentially my growing up as well. So film for me was I was very moved by movies I found that I had this like a real kind of emotional capacity for feeling through watching films. But there wasn't really one person that I kind of looked up to very much at all, but just the experience of storytelling, things like that. Yeah.
Great. Next question's from Mike. Where's Mike? There he is. Hello, Mike. Mike says, actors can play any part, but when one becomes identified with a breakthrough role, it's difficult to break out of typecasting. How did you avoid this in your career?
I don't know if I necessarily avoided it, really. I mean, when I got... Put it this way. This is basically, do you want to play a character... we have a character of an unemployed actor. Who should we get? Well, Jamie Bell's pretty good. That would be pretty good. I don't feel particularly good about that.
Sort of employed, not totally.
Yeah. I hate to be pigeonholed in that one now. Unemployed actor, Jamie Bell. Guy does it really well.
But were you actually approached to do more like musical theater type stuff?
Not at all. I've never been
okay.
asked to dance again in a movie.
Because Billy Elliot was a stage production as well after... And it
a
became
very,
a Broadway
very
show
successful musical in like different languages and all kinds of things. But no, I was never. I think the thing with it, and I've grown accustomed to this over the 17 years, is that there's just no way around it. So what's the point of trying to run away from it? You may as well just embrace it. And I'm going to be that kid. The people are just going to be like, well, he's that kid from that thing, which is fine. I don't mind that. I mean, like I've been able to do exactly what I wanted to do along the way, and I don't feel like it's hampered me really. I've still managed to work with some really great people, and but yeah, it's tough. I mean, if you're recognized as a kid, to get older and to kind of keep doing it is not easy. I think it's tricky, and there isn't a strategy that I've employed or a tactic that I've particularly employed to try and remedy that. I don't know really how to do it.
Probably harder too if you're a child actor on a TV show where it's like 8 years of your life playing.
Right.
I mean, this is one moment in time.
Sure.
And, there wasn't a sequel to Billy Elliot.
Although,
hey, never too old. It'd be called William Elliot at that point.
Yeah. William Elliot the second.
And the next question is about the film we just saw. Tarika, is that the correct pronunciation? Tarika, hello? Hello. Tarika wants to know, what was your favorite thing about making this film in particular? I know
Dancing.
You got to dance again?
Dancing, yeah, doing the dancing.
The first scene where you go into her room and you're dancing is my favorite scene.
Yes,
so
getting
joyful.
to do that. I mean, for more reasons than one. I love dancing. I still dance around the house. I don't take any kind of classes, but I dance around the house all the time. Or if there's a hardwood floor, I'll be like tapping down.
Does your son dance with you? That would be really cute to see.
He's a dancer. He's more of an actor though. He's this is a total side note. He's just discovered Harry Potter, and for 15 years I've managed to avoid Harry Potter. Books, movies, everything. It wasn't really my speed at all. But now I'm like Hufflepuff and Gryffindor. I'm like all into it, and I just can't. He hit me in the face.
Avoid it.
He hit me in the face with his wand last night. Just totally smacked me in the face. It gets very.
You only have like 12 years left of him being engaged in this.
And like 8 more films to go through as well. Yeah. So, but yeah, the dancing for a number of reasons. One, most importantly, is because for so much of this film. There's a lot of heavier tones going on, a lot of heavier moments. So I literally drew a circle around that scene and the schedule because like if I just manage to get to that, then that'll be the summit, and then I can get to the other side.
That'll be your release.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving forward.
But I was like YouTubing Saturday Night Fever clips in my trailer about 10 minutes before we went and did that. We did like 3 takes of it, and it was great. It was just a great moment of levity for all the crew to just kind of have fun and relax for a sec.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you needed it making this kind of
it's
heavy story.
She's in a bed a lot of the time, and it's very tough, and people are crying. Yeah.
Well, the movie is a beautiful melding of real life and love and sadness and kind of everything we all deal with on a daily basis.
Right.
So thank you very much for being
here.
Thank you,
guys.
all.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.